Um, since of all those terms and definitions, just kind of sharpening the pencil on what's the vocabulary that we're using kind of for the rest of the semester and kind of throughout the major and specialization when we're talking about stuff. Things like wildland versus designated wilderness, things like conservation versus preservation, that sort of thing. And that brings us to the spot now today where we get to talk a little bit more in concrete terms instead of general and very abstract terms of how do human beings use forest ecosystems? Like across all of our different specializations, right, we get our drinking water. We have rangeland managed by the United States Forest Service. We have things like timber and non-timber forest products. We have economic uses of forests. But the absolutely overwhelming majority, upwards of 99% of human presence on a forest, is typically for recreation use. So the Shawnee, I think last I saw, is like 95, 96% recreation presence. So if you go, fishing on any of the smaller waterways in the Shawnee, or if you go hiking, or even just for a scenic Sunday afternoon drive on like the U.S. highways that go through the Shawnee National Forest, that counts. The forest has to be managed in part for that scenic drive, as weird as that is. So as foresters, we start thinking first along the lines of, what's the dollar value of sticks on the stump in the forest, and what do we want to hydrate out or do a selective cut or something like that, right? The physical resource management. But pretty inescapably, immediately we hit this wall of, oh man, everybody wants to use this forest for walking their dog, for climbing, mountain biking, horseback riding, all this stuff. We have a bunch of hunting and fishing going on pretty much all the public land around here. And it's such an overwhelming presence on the landscape, all these desires and motivations for showing up to a national forest or a state park or whatever the protected area is, that we just gotta grapple with it. So today we're going to talk about the specific lens of human use on the forest ecosystem here in Southern Illinois, and more broadly about Midwest, through the lens of different career tracks that are human-oriented and take place on the forest. So this isn't so much industrial forestry operations kind of stuff. It's more all of everything else that we tend to think about less, but that is actually the overwhelming majority of presence on the forest. So to kick off that conversation, let's examine Exhibit A here, the trailer for Cocaine Bear. You've probably already seen this, so I apologize in advance for this time that we're not going to be able to get back in our lives here.
Medic! Oh, Jesus. What is that?
Beth, we should go.
Millions of dollars worth of cocaine fell from the sky this morning in Knoxville, Tennessee.
There's more of this out there. They dumped it somewhere.
I'm looking for my daughter.
Forest is a dangerous place.
Hey, Henry, check it out. Something got into it. A deer, maybe?
A lot of cocaine was lost. I need you to go and get it.
No, don't eat that, don't eat that. Let's see what kind of effect that has on us. The bear, it fucking did cocaine. A bear did cocaine.
There was a bear.
A bear?
It was fun.
Hey, that's inappropriate.
You're safe. Bears can't climb trees.
Of course I can.
It kind of seems like the thing that stays with the man forever.
Apex predator. High on cocaine.
What year did that come out? It just did.
It's about to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this year.
That's a 2023 jobby.
Long before your time. Way long before your time.
Okay, so the obvious next question that is begged by this particular movie trailer is, what human-oriented forestry career tracks did we see represented or alluded to in that? There's a very long list. So we'll capture some of the obvious ones first.
Park Ranger was first.
Park Ranger. And in terms of park rangers, that can mean a lot of different things. So let's split that out a lot finer. We've got LEOs, law enforcement officers. On the Forest Service, those are called forest protection officers. So when you want to be a conservation police person, you need to be searching not just for CPO, but also for LEO and FPO, because each of these organizations calls literally exactly the same thing, something really pretty different in the job title, and so it doesn't come up if you're not looking for the wider range of things. So the trick here is to, one insight we get out of this is search for skills and responsibilities. Duty areas instead of job titles, because every agency calls exactly the same thing, something different, not for any good reason. That's just how things have kind of developed over time. Everybody splits and sort of develops their own subculture and vocabulary and all of that. All right, so we've got the law enforcement side of things, the rangers with guns and the flat hats and so forth. And these days, some pretty sophisticated equipment. What other kinds of park rangers are alluded to or implied here, using the broad sense of park ranger?
You could also say the EMTs.
You got it. So we've got regular emergency medical technicians, ones who are light or heavy rescue, based out of something like Carbondale or Anna or Jonesboro. When we have climbers experiencing accidents or acute emergency extraction needs at a place like Jackson Falls Natural Area here in southern Illinois with hundreds and hundreds of climbing routes. It's like if somebody falls and has a compound fracture, like the femur sticking out their leg, like a life and death kind of injury, it's 4 to 6 hours to get the EMTs in and out with a person on a backboard or a stretcher. Because there's no stairs down into Jackson Falls climbing area. It's a big sort of 3 canyons arranged in a trefoil clover shape, and it's forested. You can't even land a helicopter close by. The 4 to 6 hours extraction is with air care. So medical, that side of things, tends to pair pretty closely with LEO stuff. Wilderness EMT is a more specific and highly trained version thereof. A more specific and highly trained version of wilderness EMT would be high-angle rescue teams. The United States National Park Service, one of the foremost, or some would say the foremost, forest recreation provision organization in the world at this time. They have 2 teams of extremely highly skilled rock climbers. Kinds of climbers that can go onto the most difficult climbing areas in the country, the most dangerous, like Teton, where people are literally struck by lightning on the rock face. And their personal protective equipment, like their synthetic fiber rope, is melted at 5 million volts, and they fall a couple thousand feet to their deaths in some cases. And for the ones who don't fall, who are stranded on a rock face, you have to have climbers good enough to get up there, but also good enough to pull somebody safely off the rock and back down to so-called definitive medical care, get them to a higher order trauma center. Okay? So, we got EMTs. We got wilderness EMTs. We got high angle rescue teams. I apologize, the glare on this green board is a little bit hard to see. Come on. Okay. Is that any better? I don't know, maybe. Okay. So, the medical side of things. Along with this, it's rare to have folks who are specifically and only search and rescue, but that's a thing. At the Grand Canyon, every time we go for summer camp, we're going there in the summer. Every time we go, we see WEMTs with 80-pound wilderness rescue equipment packs literally running down the trails into the Grand Canyon to get to somebody, because pretty much every day, with a temperature gradient of 70 degree different from the bottom to the top, so freezing cold at the top, 100 degrees at the bottom. That is a thing. People get in a pretty bad way. Healthy people, fit people, young people who feel like they're invincible get into exposure and hypo or hyperthermia conditions and need immediate rescue. On 2 different occasions, I've seen bodies pulled out of Grand Canyon and watched the helicopter fly the body out, and the other one was on a mule team pack train getting packed out. They had drowned in the Colorado River. This is a thing that foresters do. And it has nothing to do with operating a chainsaw or cruising timber stands or anything like that, but it's still largely under the same umbrella, right? We gotta make all of these different moving parts hang together. Okay, so we've got like search and rescue and canine teams and wilderness EMTs and law enforcement rangers doing surveillance and stakeouts in ghillie suits. LEOs are lots of fun to talk to. They have all the fun stories. My very first field trip on the Shawnee National Forest, I took students out. We were going to go camp over by LaRue Pine Hills. And we pull into the campground for the evening. We've been over by Inspiration Point, just kind of prepping for the sunset and stuff like that. And roll in the university vans down to the campground over there. And there's a Shawnee Forest Protection officer with his hand on his gun, waving us down and saying, oh, nope, you can't go into this campground. And so, being the good law-abiding citizens that we are, also noting that this guy was heavily armed and ready to go, we pulled over and said, well, officer, is everything okay? And he explained that he just needed a couple of minutes, and if we could just stay parked right here for a sec, that would be great, thank you very much. So he heads back over to his truck, grabs the assault rifle on the gun rack in there and runs off into the woods, and 30 seconds later is dragging a dude by the ankle out of the forest. It was an illegal ginseng digger selling the stuff for up to $1,000 a pound on the Southeast Asian black market. This is a big deal. Ginseng is a very slow growing root vegetable with pretty fantastic pharmacological properties, but also traditional medicinal properties that it can literally fetch $1,000 a pound. To the extent that, this is an ongoing thing on the Shawnee and has been more or less continuously in the last 20 years. So we tend to think about more visible things like Breaking Bad, all the meth labs in the Shawnee and other public lands and stuff like that. Out west, in Colorado and California, especially before legalization, big chunks of marijuana grow operations hidden in forests with punji stakes smeared with human feces, fish hooks strung down from branches at eye level for anybody, to stop anybody from, getting into the grow area and harsh someone's mellow harvest. This is a big deal, right? Non-timber forest products include illegal ones as well. All right, so we've got the law enforcement side of stuff. What other career tracks did you see shown or implied on the forest property in the Cocaine Bear. I get to say this on recording. Cocaine Bear. We're talking about Cocaine Bear today.
You're not under arrest. You don't have to talk to it. It's okay.
All right, cool. Other career tracks that you saw in there on the forestry side of stuff. It takes a pretty big team to run a national forest because of so many human uses and motivations for that forest beyond just timber and pulp and turkey tail mushrooms and campsites, stuff like that. Did you see any facilities? Any built environment?
It looked like a storage camp, like a shelter area. Like that the dude was hiding and the bear was doing more blow in the back.
All right, so cabins. Gear caches, motor pool. One of my favorite students, a guy named Kyle, a couple of years ago, came to our forestry program, and he'd been working at Yellowstone in the summer, wrenching on RVs and stuff like that, because with 10,000 RVs at any given time during peak season, some of those are going to break down every single day, and somebody's got to be able to like heavy tow those to a truck repair shop and get those going so that the folks can continue on their vacation and not get stuck and start piling up in beautiful natural places. So we have motor pools. If you like wrenching on vehicles, this is the thing. You go wrench in beautiful places and make bank doing it because nobody else is there. All right. Gear caches at Denali National Park in Alaska. They have one gravel road with frost heaves that push gravel onto that gravel road upwards or sideways up to 6 feet in a single night. They are constantly doing like industrial level road grading and repair on that road just to keep it open in the middle of summer for a couple of months before things snow up, and they just use dog sleds and snow machines after that. Okay? So they got a whole bunch of Caterpillar and Kubota and almost like surface mining level heavy equipment to keep grading a road constantly, all day, every day in that summer season. And research stations and spots like that, you just gotta stick equipment so that you can access it during your field season. And sometimes those are served by helicopter, as at like Haleakala National Park in Hawaii. The helicopters are not the only way in or out, but they're the only way to get gear and beer in and out. Okay, so any other facilities that you saw? Do you guys remember the spot where Cocaine Bear jumped through like a campground sign with like a wooden ranger on it, routed letters on there? Okay. We can go back and watch that part if you want. But anyway, the bear is destroying the hard work of the trail. Signage. At Acadia National Park, and at a lot of national parks and forests, there is a pretty awesome carpentry setup for putting together the signs and so forth that are necessary to just help people do basic land navigation on the fairly intricate trail network on Acadia National Park's island. So all winter long, you're making and repairing and producing new signs. And then early spring, you are installing those signs with your trail crews and so forth. And trail crews are building puncheon bridges, which are logs bridges used by folks like Napoleon. You fell a tree, split the timber in half, so you have two hemispherical sections, right? Like this. They're side by side. Those are 10, 12, 15, 16 feet long. You can fuck this stuff up with a chainsaw just right down the middle in the field and build sections of bridge, kind of like a low-key or small boardwalk. That's called puncheon bridging, and was how organizations like the United States Army during the Civil War or during the Napoleonic Wars over in France and Europe, how they'd move cannon through swampy areas if they had to go through the swampy area instead of around it. Super slow going, but this is the only way it's going to happen. Okay, so get puncheon bridging. Acadia has some amazing trails, like around Jordan Pond, that the entire trail, the surface of the earth at that spot is kind of right next to Jordan Pond, which floods at times. And so the soil is saturated. It's extremely soft. It is very easy for a booted or a hoofed foot to punch through that soil and sever any root hairs that or runners that are spreading through that soil. And so you chop and blend up that soil and the stabilizing structures like roots in it, and you have a huge mud hole. And Acadia sees 2.5 to almost 5 million visitors a year on this small 44,000 acre island. And so all that impact piles up real fast. So your trail crews are pretty busy, and they're pretty important. In addition to building the facility, you gotta staff the facility. So at places like Acadia National Park, they have not just trail building and trail maintenance crews that are doing fun stuff like ziplining boulders into place and blowing up rock faces with dynamite to carve out little niches and ledges where they can run a new section of trail or something like that. They also have trail runners. People whose entire job throughout that about 4-month-long peak season at Acadia National Park is to walk on the trails and make visitor contacts and just see, hey, do you guys have enough water? Hey, do you know where you are? Are you lost right now? Do you need any help? Like, that's a pretty cool summer job, you know? That's a pretty good foot in the door, so to speak, or foot out of doors, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Was it basically, let's say, so you're basically the Walmart greeter?
Yeah, kinda. But in a beautiful place, and like nobody's trying to steal anything, for the most part. Except for all the things at Acadia National Park, for example, that they are trying to steal. Like cobbles, stones, off of the cobble beaches. They don't have sand, well, they got one, but most of the beaches at Acadia and in northern New England are on granite parent material. And before you get sand out of granite, sand is just typically quartz or pumice if it's a volcanic island like Maui. Before you get sand, you have big chunks of granite, and the wave action is constantly polishing these sort of bowling ball sized boulders into spherical cobbles. They're really, really beautiful. And if you've ever played billiards or pool, and you've heard the sound of the balls racking, that's what every single wave crash on the beach sounds like. It's knocking all these cobbles together, and you get this rattling sound. It's really cool and different. And it's beautiful pink granite and basalt and stuff like that. Basalt's kind of the marine cousin of granite. And it's gorgeous. I mean, there aren't really a lot of cobble beaches around Southern Illinois. So when Southern Illinois folks head up to Acadia for a family vacation or something, the incentive is pretty strong to go to one of these cobble beaches, experience the amazing and unique soundscape of a cobble beach, and take a couple of those cobbles home. But with 2.5 to almost 5 million people a year, every year, going to, that's not a lot of cobbles per all those visitors. So if people are taking them, that's not so good. That's like a major problem. So your trail runners are presence patrols. They are primarily there just to help people. Trail runners are not really out to write tickets. They're there to catch somebody in pre-hypothermia and help them down off the mountain ridge. Acadia is a very sort of mountainous, exposed spot. It's pretty cool, but people need help, and people get into trouble real fast at a place like Acadia National Park. So We have the trail crews building trails. We have trail runners patrolling trails. We have LEOs and patrol rangers enforcing law and protecting people on trails. Man, that's just the trail walking side of stuff. Oh yeah, but there's also stuff like stables and carriage rides. My wife and I went on a carriage ride at Acadia National Park on a bunch of roads built by the Rockefeller family, that Rockefeller family, and then donated to the American public for the benefit of all people. And then we fell in love and got married. Watch out, national parks are a potent drug, almost as potent as cocaine in terms of making people fall in love instead of getting completely coked out and chasing people down. Okay? So, there's a lot of different career tracks focused on how people want to use forests. So, if you're on a trail crew, you're not really interacting with a ton of people all day, every day. If you're a trail runner on those exact same trail crew built trails, the whole point is to be interacting with as many people as you can. And then, of course, there's all the planning and support and expert staff kind of working back at headquarters in an office most of the time to both aim and to support the field staff doing the field work. Make sense? Okay. So, if you're into like GIS, computer mapping, spatial analysis, stuff like that, pretty much every park, pretty much every forest has one or several like GIS specialists, and they are driving GPSs and very, very expensive computers kind of all day, every day in the office and also out in the field collecting data and surveying stuff to capture things. So we have the whole data side. And then when somebody's RV breaks down in a national park or whatever, let's say they drag the crankcase over a bump or something like that and they're leaking transmission fluid and it's not great, somebody's got to catch that. Like, you know how toxic antifreeze is to dogs and to bears and stuff like that? Our dirty internal combustion engine vehicles are bringing a ton of chemicals into wild places, and in some cases leaving those chemicals there in a contamination kind of a way. So we have a lot of examples of that side of things. Okay. What other career tracks did you see represented in the Cocaine Bear preview in terms of forest management, specifically forest and outdoor rec management, or just like human contact management on the forest?
I mean, they did have the mobsters there, so that is a career path alternative.
That is. And because we have meth labs, because we have marijuana grow ops, because we have people foraging for magic mushrooms on federally managed rangelands, psilocybin bearing mushrooms grow in cow patties, right? That's how we get them. So a lot of cattle are on federal Forest Service managed ranch land, and so yeah, that is a problem in some specific places. Because of course it would be, right? Like, somebody's got to be tripping balls, so now we have to patrol for mushroom gatherers illegally on forests and national grasslands and rangelands. Whatever. Okay, so we've got the illegal use side of it hooks back into the LEO, the law enforcement interdiction, as it's called, sort of things. But it's not always just that. Sometimes it's just people not really thinking. So most criminals not highly intelligent, and then there's always the outliers. So on both ends, outliers on both ends. So one research project I was involved with tangentially at Dinosaur was surveilling visitors to get a sense of how many visitors out of 1,000. This is easily observable. It's slow going, but it's easily observable statistics. How many visitors out of 1,000? When there's a fire advisory, like it's really dry, droughty conditions, a bunch of dry grasses close to the road and stuff like that. How many visitors, or what's the rate among 1,000 visitors, are going to just unfortunately have a blowout flat in their trailer and drag the trailer and, grind the wheel rotor off as they are dragging this trailer and throwing sparks into dry grasses at the side of the road and starting fires along the side of the road. You have some direct experience of this, right? One truck can start how many dozens of fires?
That was 27.
Exactly. Okay? And out of 1,000 visitors, or out of 1,000 visitor groups, what percentage of those, because it's going to be a non-zero number, are, this is a true story, going to drive through your fire-adapted ecosystem in drought phase during the droughty time of year, shooting Roman candles out the windows of their, it's always like a Geo Metro or Festiva, like, whatever, I don't know. Like, that's the thing. Somebody thought that was the best use of their time and money and car. To shoot off a bunch of Roman candles, which are, like, the burning part of a Roman candle is primarily magnesium. Magnesium oxidizes, burns, at about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's more than twice the flash point for cellulosic material, woody materials, about 450 degrees Fahrenheit. So, that is a problem. Right? Everybody is special. Everybody has the right to access the American dream, the wonderful values we have sort of enshrined in our public lands. And everybody is susceptible to making these choices. Yikes. Okay. So, with this sort of brief survey of some of the field side of the human management of forests, the forest and outdoor recreation side of stuff, let's take a look at some interesting ways where we interface any of these sort of career tracks, ways that you can get paid to be a forester, doing foresty type things, protecting people and lands for way off into the future. And let's see how people sort of change that, modify it, update how we have to do things as a function of human ingenuity, technology, and so let's this is jeeping.
That's suicide.
This wasn't a problem that long ago. But now that we have internal combustion engines and high torque transmission systems and big knobbies and so forth, and we can't have this problem without the following ingredient: jeeping culture.
If I'm flipped upside down, flip me over. You mean that?
Yeah. If you can read this bumper sticker in upside down text, flip my Jeep back over, It's commoditized. It's sold on bumper stickers now. It's turned into not just the subculture that bred that idea, but the subculture that has normed that. That is now a normal thing, part of a normal Jeeping subculture, which didn't even exist 50 years ago. Okay?
Can we replay that one more time?
Oh, sure.
Just a quick replay.
Oh, sure, there, buddy. You want to see a big old tumble. In 3, 2, 1. A little off. There we go. Oh, look at that. He totally took off the top.
Now, in this specific case, nobody was killed. The people were able to climb out the open ragtop and jump out and just watch their $80,000 Jeep with its modifications go tumble down, and to their horror see that this was actually another set of folks with not quite as good of a transmission to get up on the ill-advised track up above. They're in the same group, and they almost killed their friends without meaning to. Like, yeah, this is a 1 in a million near miss, you know? But with like 300, 400, 500 million recreation visits on the Park Service alone every year. Think about 300, 400, 500 of these every year if it's a 1 in a million thing. Yeah? Okay. So, somebody's got to be able to cope with that. Who goes and cleans up that Jeep? Foresters do. You know? What kind of crazy equipment and training are you going to need to be able to do that? There's a guy named Chris who was a hydrology graduate student here a couple years ago, just finished up. And he used to work as a water quality sampling technician on the Grand Canyon. It was his job to backpack around to a bunch of basically metal boxes fed with solar panels that did like continuous stream gauging and water quality monitoring on some of these side drainages into the Grand Canyon. So like Bright Angel Canyon drains into the Grand Canyon. There's a bunch of water sampling stations along Bright Angel Creek. And he would go to each one and, you know, download the data, reset anything that needed to be reset mechanically, blow the dust off of the solar panels, and hike to the next one. Pretty good gig if you like backpacking. Like, if that's your office for the day, you know, gotta cover 10 miles and download 2 sets of data. Not a bad life. But he talked about how it wasn't so much a search and rescue operation at the Grand Canyon while he was there. It was everybody grab your spatula or vacuum. We need to go recover what bits we can. There's a guy who was driving out from Vegas about 90 miles away with his family, one big at a casino, and I don't remember if he was on cocaine or not, but he drove off the highway that goes along the lip of the Grand Canyon and drove like with his, I believe his family in the vehicle and like a couple $1 million in cash from the casino, and hit the bottom, and just the car just blew apart. So the first people on scene, there's like money fluttering around and a bunch of like thin red vapor of like former human beings and bits of car. Well, you gotta clean all that stuff up, and you gotta account for all of that money, and someone's gotta like pick up and sort out the teeth back at the morgue, you know, and get that stuff to the morgue in the first place, so that next of kin can be notified and that positive identifications can be made, and so forth. All of that stuff. That's part of what forestry is as a function of. It's fun to drive fast. It's even funner to drive fast in pretty places. It's fun up until the point that you jump the guardrail in the Grand Canyon. All right. Let's see. Seen that one. How about this one? We'll make this a little bit bigger here. Putting an airfoil, a parasail, on a snow machine.
Man, those Canadians are nuts.
You can go 50 or 80 miles an hour on a snow machine. That's plenty enough to get enough lift off of the wing surface of the airfoil. And, I mean, as we're watching this again, show of hands, how many of you guys and gals think this would be more interesting or fun than getting a sharp stick in the eye? Like, there's a reason that this was recorded and sponsored by Red Bull, and somebody did the engineering to figure out where exactly do we need to hook that airfoil on to the snow machine near its center of gravity so that we could do this. We could make this 15-second video and probably spend in the neighborhood of $40,000 or $50,000 up to maybe $100,000 or so, including all the externalized costs, to do stuff like this. Like, a lot of us have a sense of moving is cool. So sitting in a classroom passively listening to a professor talk is like literally the worst way to get anything done and accomplished or learned. Such is life. But somebody had to receive the phone call from the Red Bull promoter and say, now you want to do what now? In Vail or up in the Alaska range or wherever this is, the Cascades, whatever. Okay? This is a thing. And thanks to technology, thanks to cultural changes.
I was expecting some kind of reaction, but in the air, he's so chill. It all started one day when Puka was watching me paraglide.
He's chill because his doggy brain is so completely overwhelmed. Like, they're not evolved to go parachuting or parasailing in this case.
Puka was okay to fly. I had a checklist. The first step was to build a special harness for him. So in the air, it's super comfy for him and for me. And I started to play with my own glider, with it being around me.
C'est different.
After a few days, we were running around with the glider.
I'm sorry, I gotta turn the volume. I can't stand that sort of sugary pop music. Anyway. So think about this for a sec. We have to marshal the extreme outer limit of dog training and parasailing and natural resources management, right? So this is exciting. The Alps are cool, or wherever they are. This is an awesome thing, and it makes a cool video to put on social media, to put an idea like this. Oh, I should bring my dog on a trip to the Alps. Whether or not my Chihuahua is evolved or bred to survive in the Alps, we're gonna do this thing, okay? But think about all of the organisms that you're not seeing in the foreground of this video, right? So bison stampede when they see something like this, and they will literally stampede off a cliff to the entire herd's destruction because somebody wanted to make an Instagram video. And we don't have a lot of big bison herds left. Like, we've been spending millions of years and decades trying to bring them back from the edge of being hunted to extinction, okay? So, as foresters, sometimes your WEMT work is dealing with this.
That shows you how much he really loves his dog, doesn't it?
So think about a 200-pound person plus 50 pounds of flight gear landing on the dog's spine there, right?
Yeah, it seems pretty selfish, doesn't it?
So
That's pretty fucking.
dog spines are long, and the leverage exerted by your loaded down body on top of that can pop their intervertebral discs and lame the dog. And they have to get a procedure called a hemilaminectomy to basically saw a window in the spinal cord to let the basically the cerebrospinal fluid and the pressure off. This is a big deal. And you don't have to do that at all. You don't even have to know that hemilaminectomies are a thing until somebody comes up with the idea to do this in a forested ecosystem. You don't have to worry about bison stampeding until somebody stampeding off of cliffs in new and exciting ways and in places that they never had to worry about that before, until somebody invents the first DJI drone with a 4K optically stabilized 60 frames per second video. Does that make sense? Okay, so all of this gets back to, what are we motivated to do on forests? How are we motivated to use them as human beings beyond basic fundamental like forestry timbering operations and stuff like that? Okay. So technology really gives us, here's an older version of technology, but it proves the same point, or illustrates the same point. These are literally the first mountain bikes ever. You may have heard of the brand Fisher mountain bikes. Gary Fisher is one of the stoners interviewed in this video. Okay. So this is Marin County, California. In the late 60s, early 70s, 50 years ago.
Clunking is muddy in the winter, and it's dusty in the summer.
It's been estimated that there are probably no more than a couple of hundred clunkers in all of Northern California, and this race today featured about 40 of them.
Okay, so it wasn't called mountain biking, it was clunking first. Where they are doing this, these are Forest Service roads. So some Forest Service roads are not designed for this at all. Some of the wrecks they show on this are pretty heinous. And they're like, it's okay, man, I can't feel my face anyway. It's fine. But that's kind of the culture of innovations, the sort of the underground AF sense of how some of us want to use our forests. And so as a forest protection officer, as a conservation officer, as a trail runner, or a ridge runner as they're called, as somebody doing GIS, you start coming across this stuff and it's like, okay, this is now a thing. We really need to figure out how to deal with this. We'll wrap up with the example of the Shawnee, and we'll come back to technology for our next class session. On the Shawnee, climbing is, and for decades, has not really been a thing. But people are climbing on the Shawnee, and they've been developing routes for a long time. And there's even this, among some climbers, this sense of excitement and thrill of, oh, the Forest Service doesn't know I'm here. And they might not realize that I'm here for a couple of years. I can get in a whole bunch of new routes developed and a whole bunch of first ascents in the climbing guidebook that I'm going to put together for this area. That's some natural space on the Shawnee, for example. And this is a thing. And then people get pretty upset when there's not emergency medical services to pull your friend out because they've hurt themselves on the rock, but the whole place was developed for climbing without even the knowledge, much less the consent or the teamwork of the Forest Service in helping to open those areas up for climbing and so forth. So this is a real thing. This is not like, oh, let's just go be foresters and see what those wacky recreationists are up to today. This is like life and death for some people. So we'll pick up our conversation right there on Thursday. Thanks very much. No homework for today. And see you next time. We're around for questions if you have them. And I'll send you out on clunking.
This is the fabled repack downhill race held for 8 years running now, and organized by the veteran puncher rider Charlie Kelly.
Yeah, I'd be happy to help you out with kind of decoding some of that stuff, for sure. Fair.
That's all I want.
Yeah.
I just want to be another Steve.
We'll find you something.
Sometime next month or month and a half, I'm going to have my tire too.
Okay.
Back where I live, I have to cow. There's got a little forest.